So hi everyone, my name is Cassidy. I will be kicking us off this evening. Thank you all so much for being here. This is the Food Policy Council's 9th annual public forum, which is really exciting. This is our 3rd event that we've had virtually, which is great because we get people from all over the state joining on for a call like the one we have this evening. This is Cultivating Community, Investing in Food and Farm Businesses. We'll be talking about the grant that we released this fall and chatting with our panelists as well. So very excited for the rest of this evening. I'll be kicking it off with some Zoom info about our interpretation options tonight, and then also welcoming John Green, who will give a welcome for the event tonight. All right, so starting with Zoom, we invite you all to edit your name and pronouns. So in your little screen where it shows your face, you can hit the 3 dots and make those changes if you select rename. This event will also be recorded. We will upload this to our YouTube channel so you can view at a later date or share with friends who couldn't make it tonight. We have a live captioner with us this evening, so you're welcome to turn on subtitles for the event if that's easier. There should be a button at the bottom of your screen that says closed captions, I believe, or live transcript, and then you can select that and hit show subtitles. We are also going to be using the chat this evening. That's how we would like you all to communicate with us about any tech challenges you're running into, as well as for our guest speaker panel. When we do our Q&A section, if you have a question for the panelists, put it in the chat and we'll make sure that it gets to our moderator who will ask them that question. And then we'd like you all to introduce yourself in the chat this evening, just so we know who's in the room. Like I mentioned, there's people who registered from all across the state. So if you could share where you're tuning in from tonight and also your favorite spring vegetable, just to keep it food related. And then this evening we have Arabic interpretation available. So if that will help you experience the event tonight, we would welcome you to join that option. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a button that says interpretation. And then you can select Arabic and it should take you into a separate audio channel where we have Aladdin, our Arabic interpreter, who will be speaking to you and relaying that event content. And you can mute the original audio if you don't want to hear the English playing at a lower volume in the background. And if you're dialing in, this option won't work. You have to be connected to computer audio. We have a short and sweet agenda tonight. Take us till 7:30. We'll have a welcome and Food Policy Council introduction for those of you who aren't familiar with the council. You can learn more. We'll share about the Community Food and Farm Grant while we're all here tonight. And then we'll have a Q&A and guest speaker panel. And we'll close out the evening with talking about what's next for the future of the grant and for the Food Policy Council. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Supervisor John Green. He is our Food Policy Council liaison, and he'll be sharing a welcome with you all.
Thank you, Cassidy. Good afternoon, everyone. As Cassidy mentioned, my name is John Green. I'm a member of the Johnson County Board of Supervisors and the board liaison to the Food Policy Council, the host of this, the 9th annual forum, Cultivating Community. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors, please accept our warm welcome to this year's forum. Thanks to the Johnson County staff, including but hardly limited to Ilsa DeWald and Cassidy Beamer, to say nothing of the many hours of volunteer efforts from the Food Policy Council. I'm confident today's event will be a great success. Today, you'll hear about the Johnson County Community Food and Farm Grant, which this year has awarded a total of $100,000 to invest in our local food system. The Board of Supervisors is grateful to the federal government, specifically the American Rescue Plan Act, which provided the funds for the 9 recipients ranging from $2,500 to $15,000. Our grant recipients are local folks who will utilize these investments in a few ways. Many will extend their growing season or otherwise boost their productive capacity. There are also plans for professional development and entrepreneurship to ensure producers not only have the chops to produce, but to manage, market, and innovate. Johnson County specifically looked for opportunities to help underestimated and under-resourced communities to meet local needs of cultural significance. If you like what you hear, we anticipate another round of grants this fall into next year, so bear that in mind. For additional updates, please check the local foods page on our website at johnsoncountyiowa.gov. A few words about the Food Policy Council. Formed by the Board of Supervisors in 2012, the council has a membership between 10 and 15, appointed by the board to 4-year terms. Formally tasked with advising the board and all county departments as appropriate, the council is also responsible for providing advice to any person or group involved in local food issues, which, as humans, we all are. The council does a lot of outreach and research to inform those recommendations. As anyone who has ever sown a crop knows, what you get out of a thing is determined by what you put into it. Johnson County is very fortunate to have benefited from the volunteerism, generosity, and plain hard work of council members past and present. None of this is possible without their help, and the board thanks all of you. Next, you'll hear a more in-depth introduction to the council and the Community Food and Farm Grant. The Johnson County Board of Supervisors is thrilled to have the opportunity to invest right here in our local community to help improve our food systems, to broaden accessibility to our diverse communities, and to ensure a more resilient future for all of us. Again, welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Schindler. I've served as a member of the Food Policy Council for over 4 years, and I'm so happy to welcome you here to this year's virtual forum space. The Johnson County Food Policy Council serves as the host for this annual event, and as a council, we seek to build a food system that is community-based, equitable, and resilient. These core values were at the center of our vision for the Community Food and Farm Grant. So I'm excited to hear from our panelists this evening and to see what those core values look like in action. We are a 15-member council, as was mentioned, appointed by the Johnson County Board of Supervisors. So we have folks representing all different aspects of the food system, from farmers to landowners, nonprofit workers, local food business owners, land access experts, community organizers, food justice advocates, policy wonks, and currently we are recruiting new members right now, and we'd truly love for you to apply. Applications are open through Tuesday, June 20th at 4:30 p.m. And I believe at the end of today's forum, there'll be more information, specific information on where to apply and how to apply. So serving as a member of the Food Policy Council, I mentioned that there's 15 of us. It's all volunteer. We're all, or most, the vast majority of us are on this call tonight. And I just want to give a big thank you to each and every member of the council for generously sharing your expertise and time with the goal of building a more community-based, equitable, and resilient food system for everyone in our county and beyond. So you've heard a little bit about the members, but you may be wondering, what does it mean to be a Food Policy Council member? What do you do as a part of the council? The Food Policy Council has monthly meetings, and those meetings are open to the public. We do regularly have members of the public attend those meetings, and please consider this your personal invitation. We'd love for you to join our monthly meetings, either in person or via Zoom. Between monthly meetings, all members of the council participate in subcommittees, and those subcommittees research policies, gather community input, plan events, and ultimately all of that work leads to our policy recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. And over the years, those policy recommendations from the council have impacted county land use policy, food and agricultural goals in the county, and funding decisions, as is evident with the Community Food and Farm Grant that we're focusing on today. Here you can just see over the past decade, some of the Food Policy Council's most impactful work, from policy change around permitting and farms back in 2013, 2015, to the funding of the Community Food and Farm Grant in 2021. So, like most counties, Johnson County received funding from the federal government to respond to COVID and its economic impacts. And that came in the form of the American Rescue Plan Act, which I'll refer to as ARPA. The Food Policy Council, we knew as a council that ARPA funding was coming to our county, and we saw that as an opportunity to advocate that some of that funding be invested in the local food system to address COVID's impact on food and farm businesses, as well as households who faced increased food insecurity. So in 2021, we presented recommendations to the board and secured funding. From that, we created the Community Food and Farm Grant with the purpose of increasing community-based food production, processing, and distribution capacity, all with the goal of increasing food security in Johnson County. Here you can see the 3 goals that we settled on for the Community Food and Farm Grant. Keeping those goals in mind, but also remembering back to my first slide, the Food Policy Council's values for a community-based, equitable, and resilient food system. As we're talking about the grant and the grant's goals, I really like to see where they intersect with the values of the council. And I'll highlight that the goals for this grant are more robust than simply growing local businesses or increasing local food within the county. Of course, this grant very much supports both of those things. It very much supports growing local food and farm businesses, but we also intentionally named the goal of expanding worker benefits and increasing low-income communities' access to community-based food as well. So with the grant goals in mind, there were a few eligibility requirements to receive grant funds. So because ARPA funding is specifically focused on supporting residents of Johnson County, it is a requirement that projects must impact the residents of Johnson County. And because our council values a community-based and resilient food system, we also made it a requirement that projects must include food products grown or raised in the Johnson County food shed. So in Johnson County or the surrounding counties here in Eastern Iowa. Lastly, project entities. Yeah, thank you. The project, anybody applying has to receive less than $1 million in gross income annually. So just focusing on smaller businesses. So 2020, we all know that was the year of the pandemic and COVID. 2021, we presented to the board. We were approved for funding and created the Community Food and Farm Grant. 2022, we started with some outreach. We spread the word about the grant via email, social media, and application clinics. We held 3 clinics with community partners. We were intentional about connecting with community leaders who could reach networks that we weren't as connected to. And we also made it a priority that all of the materials were available in, I believe, the 4 most common languages in Johnson County. And as best we could, we tried to make this grant available to include people who have maybe never applied for a grant before. And in 2022, 126 people, entities, organizations submitted applications to the grant program. So it became very clear there was a need and interest in what this grant was offering. Many members of the Food Policy Council were on the review committee, and they put in over 75 hours in the review process alone for this grant. it was a very tough, time-consuming decision, and ultimately this round of grant funding was able to fund 9 of those 126 applications. And it's important to note here that the grant review committee really prioritized funding applicants from communities that have been denied equitable access to capital needed to start and sustain farm and food businesses, and also applicants providing food that meet the needs of different cultures in our community. And of the 9 applications that review committee selected, they put forth that recommendation to the board, and all 9 were approved for the funding that was, what's the word I'm looking for? Suggested. And all 9 of them are listed on the next slide. And I'm really excited because representatives from 2 of these groups are here tonight to sit on our panel. And with that, I will pass it off to Hannah.
Thanks, Molly. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Schultz. I'm really excited to be here with you this evening. I've been a member of the Food Policy Council for nearly 3 years, and I'm super excited for the conversation this evening to talk with Marlén, Anna, and Sara about their work in the community food system. So the 4 of us are going to be in conversation, but we really want to hear from you all as well about what you're interested in hearing. So please put those questions in the chat. Christy Walker, another member of the Food Policy Council, will pull those out and share them with me. So we may not get to them right away, but we will be tracking those and get to them as we can. So on to the panel. Sara Puffer is co-owner of El Azul Mexican Market and was awarded a community food and farm grant. Marlén Mendoza is co-founder of Emprendimiento Latino and co-founder of the Diversity Market in Iowa City. And Anna Hankins is a farmer at Over the Moon Farm and Flowers, and her business also received a community food and farm grant. So Sara, Marlén, and Anna, thank you all for being here. I want to start with one of my favorite questions, which is, what is your food story and why is community-based food important to you? Sara, I will start with you.
I would say, yeah, my food story started because we moved to North Liberty from Iowa City. And in Iowa City, we had a number of Mexican and Latino markets we could visit to get between hot sauces or different produce we needed to, to cook things that were authentic. Because my partner is Edgar, he's the other owner. He's from Mexico. I was born here in the US. My family isn't Latino, but I've been around. And so there's a lot of things I've learned. And so we thought, we live here in North Liberty. There's not currently, there wasn't a Mexican market or a Latino store when we moved here in 2019. And so it just kind of, we were pondering the idea. We both worked in food businesses and, that wasn't where we currently had been, but we were aware of like the rules and how things go. And we said, we can do this. And then kind of in 2021 and 2020 was when we were really thinking about opening something here in North Liberty, and finally made it happen at the end of 2022. And so now we've been in business since December, and we have a lot of people from the community who come, between folks who are Latino themselves or, just people who live here in the community and appreciate Mexican and Latino food. We have a lot of really happy people here. So that's where we started and where we are now.
Thanks, Sara. Marlén, how about you? What's your food story?
Thank you. It's so nice to be here with everybody today. My food story, I would say, starts from as long as I'm not from Iowa. I was born and raised in Chicago. And I moved here for school from 2012 to 2016, and then I moved back as a working professional in late 2019, early 2020. But I would say my food story has always been how impressed I have been with my mother, with the little that we grew up with and the little resources that we had, that she always managed to feed us from an ingredient-only household. And I did not realize how grateful I am for that until much later when I was in college. And I realized I was totally not eating ingredient-only kind of food. I was eating a lot of processed food and realizing how, for some it can be very hard, but my mother always made it her mission and her goal to make simple things, rice and beans, things that she could make at home for us, because she understood the value of what you're consuming in the food system. And, you want to know what you're eating and feeding your kids. And so I'm very grateful for my mother for that, and I've never lost that, as well as I tend to work with a lot of Hispanic and Latino food vendors or businesses, and overwhelming majority of the businesses are, at least more than 60%, are food related. So naturally, a lot of them want to sell different types of cuisines and foods, and that's kind of how I found myself in this advocacy space as well in food policy.
Awesome, thank you. And Anna, how about you? What's your food story?
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for having me tonight. This is a really exciting event. So I think in the context of Over the Moon, I would say that my food story is my wife and I, Shay, co-own Over the Moon Farm and Flowers, and we started this business in early 2019, and it was kind of a product of figuring out how we could sustain ourselves in our rural community, how we could not only support our future, but how we could support the future of the place we were living. And since then has grown into a pretty vibrant, diversified farm. And I would say that has been built off a passion and love for growing things, specifically animals, but also horticultural crops and more. So that's my quick food story.
Excellent, thank you all. I know we all have like a multi-hour food story, so I appreciate your 30-second versions. That was really great. So Sara and Anna, your businesses have received grant funding from the Community Food and Farm Grant, and I'd love to hear more about what you plan to do with those funds. So Sara, I'll start with you. Can you share a bit about what your business does and how this grant will help your business?
Our primary operation is we're a grocery store. We offer foods from Mexico, Latin America, fresh produce, and we even do have a carniceria, which is a meat counter. We make our own prepared foods. So tonight we have some hot tamales. If anybody's around before 9, come get some. We also make our own fresh salsas and guacamole, queso dip, because everybody loves queso dip. And I would eventually like to do a little bit more professional services, because I'm fluent in Spanish and I have a long experience of translating and notarizing and office work. So that'll come, I think, later. But we plan on using the funds to essentially help bring more produce, display more, even locally sourced meats, because right now we're a little bit limited on the refrigeration we have and the display. So we're interested in getting just kind of elevating it and making it more, right now they're kind of just, some things are kind of on the floor, like on some pallets and stuff, high enough that it's okay. But we want to have something that's a lot more, professional, looks good. People don't have to bend down, because we do focus a lot on, our aisles are very wide, so that, folks with any sort of mobility concern are able to get through, and it's not a concern, right? And so that's another thing, we can help kind of make it a little bit more accessible. We also we're wanting to get perhaps, we're going to get another deli case because that will be helpful for the display. And then potentially an ice maker just to help with some additional display and production of specific things, and cooling, because sometimes it's hard to cool things down quickly if you don't have enough space. So it just all has to do with the health code. So we're just, we have a lot of ideas, and we're really, really grateful and excited, yeah, to get some things moving.
That's great.
Hopefully I answered the question all the way. I know it was multi-part, so.
Yeah, no, that was great. And you're getting some love in the chat that your salsas are amazing, all caps. So
thank you. We
yes.
put a lot of love into our food, so I appreciate it.
I have not been there yet, but I am really looking forward to making it over there one of these days. So thanks for sharing with us.
Of course.
Anna, how about you? How are these grants going to help your business?
Yeah, so Over the Moon Farm and Flowers, we produce pastured poultry as well as pork and seasonal cut flowers. For this grant specifically, we were going to focus on our Peking duck production. We're one of the few people in the state that produces a fairly significant amount of ducks for meat. And so we sell many of them in the Johnson County food shed, through the Iowa City Farmers Market, and also through our own just retail channels. And so we have really had more demand than we can meet. And so this year we were really, or last year in 2022, we were really looking at what were the sticking points on our production that would really allow us to scale up and make sure that we're producing a humanely raised product and getting them to as many people as possible. So with the funding through this grant, we're constructing a commercial grade brooder, which a brooder is a heated space for young animals. It's really, really critical with poultry to have a heated space for that day after hatch. For ducks, they'll be in this heated space that we're building from as soon as they're hatched through day 17. And that is just, it's really critical for their development to have healthy animals. That's typically where you have the most mortality. And that's where we were experiencing the most problems. And so this will decrease any mortality. It will increase our biosecurity, which is really important when raising waterfowl, especially with the threats of avian flu. And it will allow us ultimately to produce more ducks that we'll be able to sell throughout the Johnson County food shed, and hopefully be able to scale up and meet more of that need.
That's great. Thank you, Anna. So Marlén, I know you didn't apply for a grant, but you are a great promoter of it and are a great promoter of local business and entrepreneurs. So what are you excited about with this grant, and what encouraged you to share it with others?
Thank you. I would say first and foremost that knowledge is really power. You know, it's not really enough like who you know, but who can really help you access the things that you need to help you not only save time, efficiency, but money. And all of these things is through channels of communication. And one way or another, when a community does not have access to this, and it's not just the Latino community, you have a lot of food vendors that start off small. Oftentimes they start, under the table, not necessarily out of bad intent, but there's a lot of education that needs to be shared when it comes to, if you're a person that comes from a different country, or if you might not genuinely know all the permits and the regulations that you have to go through at the county to really have something set up so that you're not doing something intentionally bad, right? And all of these information, we need to get to the community so they understand where they can tap into resources that exist. When I found out about this, first and foremost, I was so excited because like I mentioned earlier, I work with a lot of food vendors. And I wanted to make sure that they knew that this existed, right? Let alone what is ARPA funding, right? So I just told them the federal, the federal government for once in a lifetime opportunity is sending a lot of local money locally. And one of the things that we've decided to use it for is to create better food systems and letting them know that you can apply, do your best to apply and see what you can get from these sources. Many of them don't have experience applying for grants. And we can kind of talk about that in the next couple of questions that we have. But first and foremost, even if they did not receive the grants, they need to have more experience of how do you apply for this type of funding? What does that look like? What does it look like to operate in systems that require certain type of language? What is it that they're looking for? So you position yourself to get more funding later on, whether it's through the county, through the city, whether it's private, but it really opens up people's perspective of that there's money around. You just have to know how to find it, look for it, and really ask the right questions. So for all those reasons, I was very excited that I had something that I can directly give to people that I knew firsthand that could potentially qualify and receive the money, right, if they apply for this type of funding.
Excellent, thank you. And we appreciated receiving and reading those grants from folks that you sent our way. So thank you for that. The next question is for all three of you. What do you see as the barriers or unexpected challenges working within the community-based food system? And what hopes do you have for overcoming those challenges? And this time I'm going to start with Anna.
Yeah, so some challenges that we experience and deal with as Over the Moon. One of them is access to local food infrastructure. So for us, that looks like access to meat processing that meets our needs. For example, with the duck enterprise that we're talking about for this grant, we're taking animals 2.5 hours away to Illinois, and it would be to go to a federally inspected facility, which is required of us in order to sell those animals through the routes that we do, like the farmers market or restaurants or other public spaces. And so it would be in the future, we would love to have an option that was in the state or closer, but also it's challenging to build enterprises around only having one option. There's only one place between here in Indiana that will process those ducks in a federally inspected way. So that it's nerve-wracking to build an enterprise when you know your infrastructure is really limited. And so that's one big barrier. And then another barrier that we are facing as a direct-to-consumer business in general, but especially one that produces quite a few animals, is access to operating capital. These grants are really amazing because they allow us access to capital that we can build infrastructure with and make improvements with and increase production, but it takes so much cash in order to also be able to actually scale up that production. And so accessing traditional operating loans can be really, really challenging. I'm currently going through the process and it's really, really challenging. And so ways to access operating capital and work with banks and have that support is definitely a challenge that I see and face.
Thanks, Anna. Marlén, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, thank you. I thought about this one, and if I could, I would focus on three things as barriers right now. One of them being strongly business education, just all around. When any person, we're talking in this sense specifically food vendors, or food business, but regardless if it's a food business or not, you can start a business because you see a gap in the market, right? So Sarah was like, hey, they don't have one in North Liberty, so I'm going to start a business. And you have someone that can make something that's such good, high quality that they know that it has value. I'm going to put it on the market. And what you need is a person that has the will and the desire and the passion, the vision to say, I'm going to get this done and I'm going to do it. However, no one teaches us formally what you need to set up on the back end of a business, like your whole business operation, all the education that goes through it. Most people go through it as they're realizing it because they're opening the business. And I'm speaking from experience myself, one will get overwhelmed and be like, oh, I had no idea I had to do all these other things, you know? And that process can be very lonely because you might think, well, everybody, I see other businesses, are they going through the same thing? Am I the only one kind of going through this? When you don't have some form of, group where you can kind of share information, have easy access to information, to really showing people entrepreneurship is hard on many days, very rewarding on others, but that's what's worth it, that you're putting your idea into action. It's no different from the little guy when they're starting off small. And to me, what I try to do the most is someone will be very excited and say, I want to start a food truck, or I'm going to get do this and that. And they'll start pulling money from places to just get this one thing that really is overhead, right? And when we try to tell them, this is great, we believe in you. However, let's take one step back, let's sit down, let's put together this idea on paper. Let's have a vision. Let's figure out what are all the things that you need to do. Did you know that, not to discourage them, but to show them that we have a lot of things to tackle before making that large purchase, right? So I mentioned that because very similar to this grant, folks might think, why is it that I didn't get the funding? And oftentimes I will tell them, when you are applying for grants, you have to have a business plan in place. They might not ask you directly for a business plan, but what they're asking you to fulfill really is a lot of the tools and language that you should know about. This is what I'm looking to take this money and invest it in this, and this is what it will cost for this. All of this stuff, it would be easier for you to apply for the grant if you had these things in place, a business plan, a vision, stages of growth, knowing where are you going to go. This kind of information is also super important when you are applying for funding, and you're also trying to show people how they can take the risk of giving you, and it's not just a grant, but a bank. You go to a bank, they're going to ask you for all this information before they then say, we're going to take the risk and give you this investment. So I tell them that this applies at all levels. So business education is very key. One of the things that we're working really hard to bring this type of community, this business education in many languages, in the newly formed business district in South of 6 business district, we started our programming for they're called Down to Business Lunch and Learns, right? So it's very, typical programming that most business districts or chambers have. There's free lunch, you come in, there's different topics based on the survey that we did for the community around topics that they need to learn more about. We bring in certain speakers, local resources in the area to come in and talk about that so that they have a little bit more of understanding of what it is. And then we send them resources to follow up afterwards so that they can get a free business diagnostic, or if there's a free business accelerator program that's being subsidized by the city or the chamber or any entity, these are the types of resources we want to share with them so that, hey, take advantage. You're going to do a business accelerator program. You're going to walk away with so much more information so that, sorry, yeah, you're translating. I just realized you said to slow down to translate. To get them this information that they need. So I would say first and foremost, business education, all around, all levels, business education. The second thing that's a big barrier is mindset. One starts with a business very excited, and they're here, right? They're up here. As you go through some of these barriers that most business owners go through, it's easy to then say, you know what, this is not for me, or maybe I should just not keep pushing forward. And one of the things that we're making people comfortable with is, can we fail fast and forward? So what I mean by that, can we test and measure things where this might not work out? Okay, we know not to replicate that again. Let's try something else, right? And still be supportive in that process so people can really test whatever business in food that they want to do. But with that, we need to get people to have the right mindset. The mindset of, this is not a competition, there's abundance for all. We can all work together to connect systems, to connect resources, so that everybody kind of comes together. That was really one of the big ideas for the diversity market in the South District was, can we bring in people, Black and brown people, immigrants, all people from all different groups, and show them that we can work together to build something up instead of trying to be too competitive and saying, well, that person is selling something similar to me, so I don't want to participate. Going back to business education, we say, well, there's something this person sells, and this is the one thing that their market likes. Is there something that you make that's good for you, that you can sell? And you're still hitting a different market, right? So a lot of this, changing the mindset of not necessarily going so much competition, but how can we help and grow each other, do business referrals, help support each other. You have wholesale, I need it for a market. Can we figure out a direct local relationship so I don't have to go somewhere else to get what it is that I need? I can keep the money locally and keep it here locally. So a lot of that comes with the mindset of growth, right? Can we say, okay, this person might charge a little bit more, but it's the value in the product and it's local. Can we have them see the connection of that, for their own business, and then where are they investing that business, and how can we keep that locally and have it kind of more of that abundance mindset? That's the second one. The third, what I would say, is connecting people and agencies, local economic agencies. Business support systems, can we connect them and align them and show people, here's certain things offer. And we're doing a better job as a community to kind of share these resources out. But those would be the three things that I see as barriers. We're definitely chipping away at them, and we're doing a lot of great work at doing that. but we're still trying to work to make sure that we're connected to all entities that exist. Like I just recently got connected to Iowa Center for Advancement, which is in Muscatine. And I tell them like, hey, sometimes we get vendors from Muscatine. We're gonna make sure that while they're here, we connect them and say, hey, there's this thing back home. We have connections in West Liberty with people who are doing great work out there. We have great connections with Kiva, loan program, right? So all of these resources that exist in the community, really being able to refer people that we work with, right, community leaders, to a lot of all these resources so that they know what exists and they have the option to then say, okay, this fits for me, I'm gonna move forward with that. Or no, not right now, this is not kind of what I need. But making sure that we don't feel like, oh, these are my people that I work with, I'm gonna be kind of like a gatekeeper of resources, like that. No, we wanna align all business support systems through and through. So between business education, the abundance mindset for growth, and then helping to connect and refer others to other business support systems, if we keep working on that as a community, we can get further along very well. And we are doing that, you know? So there's still problems, but we're doing a good job at learning how to communicate that.
Wow, thank you. That was a whole lot, and I took a lot of notes. So thank you for all of your work and for sharing your thoughts on that. Sara, how about you? What do you see as unexpected challenges and barriers to working within the local food system?
I was pondering this for a while. So I think for our business, I mean, it might be sort of the time to locate farmers, to locate the local producers. You know, I was even looking for somebody when I used to work at the co-op, like in Iowa City. I couldn't find, it's like a guy who it's like hots like corn and eggs, like, because I was looking for an egg supplier, because it's so hard to find things like that. And we do sell fresh eggs, we sell milk. Like I want to have that stuff in my store, but I can't find a lot of these things. And we're just so busy right now with all the deliveries, all the prep. It's hard to get the time to like delve in and just be able to, you know, and then setting up your account and setting up delivery schedule and all that. And so that's something that is a big challenge, because then I have some suppliers that it's just like, oh, do you have this? Yes, we do. Okay, thank you. You know, and so having maybe a compiled list of, you know, what do these people offer? Who are all the local farmers that are registered? Even a database would be great. I'm a list person. So I just want to be able to like find something, call and get on the list, you know? And then I think also it might be difficult in terms of, you know, competing with some of the prices that some of the, like the bigger, you know, I have a distributor from Chicago. I mean, I don't know how good their pricing is based on, you know, or based as compared to like a local producer, because I would like to use more local, especially just because of, you know, we have to think about our carbon footprint. We have to think about supporting our local community, and, you know, but still, of course, you have to make money to continue to have your business be in place. And so that's a concern and a barrier potentially that we would have. Also, another unexpected challenge would be, you know, what happens if we have a really good person bringing us our supplies and they have an issue and they can't bring it, or there's like a seasonal, you know, it's like just not in season, so we can't get it from them. And, you know, like during the winter, for example, we don't really use a lot of like root vegetables. We do use onions, but that might be, you know, that onions and garlic might be like the only thing that they can really get us at that time. So that's kind of what I was able to think of. And let me see here. Yeah, I just think it's hard to know where everything is. Luckily, I spoke with Marlén, and she has some folks in mind about like who I can get a hold of, because I am really interested in being able to source from more local producers. I mean, it's just so hard to find. You just kind of have to know like somebody who knows somebody, I feel like. So that's where I am.
Thank you. I think there are probably a lot of people joining us today who also have ideas for you. So those might come in the chat or might come to you later as well. So this is a good group to be in. So I want to dream big. What sorts of changes or supports would help alleviate some of these challenges? And this time I'm going to start with Marlén.
Thank you. I had a very direct, actual, maybe potential solution that maybe we can do. I told Giselle that sometimes I have to be careful in what I say, because then a couple of years down the line, it's like, oh my God, that actually got done. So I would say specifically, whether it's for the community food and farm grant for next year or anything similar like it that anyone's interested in doing, I think that not just putting the opportunity to fund local small businesses for this opportunity, but to also provide, maybe the city, the county, somebody can figure out, can you subsidize a couple of free coaching sessions with these food vendors, so that so not only are they getting the orientation about the grant and how to apply, but they're also optional. Come to these 3 slots, whatever exists. You have coaches there on demand. You come, you sit, you bring as much information you can, and they're going to help you so you can strengthen your application so that you apply to this so you have a higher chance. The reason why is because not only is it a learning experience for the food business and the vendor, but it allows. So yeah, that would be my proposed policy solution or recommendation, whatever you want to call it, is can we find a way to also have some local business coaches, and if there's any that can really give a good sense of how can you set up a strong application, and saying, let's look at your business, let's see, do you actually need this money for this? Because through those kinds of sessions, you will actually realize, well, I'm thinking I'm needing this money for this, but in reality, what I actually need is to get connected to more local providers instead of trying to do some other thing, right? So it's really a good pathway finder for the business owner to understand also, do you know actually what you're asking for? And then that way they have a better understanding how to use that same language for other funding. And it really helps out everybody, helps you all have stronger applications, and it helps for people to understand, why did I not get funded this round, this time, right? And knowing what to do to fix it around the second time around. So that's what I would say for potential solutions.
Thank you, Marlén. We did for this round do a couple of application clinics, but it would be great to connect with you as we plan our grant for the coming year to see how we can strengthen those. So thank you for that suggestion. Sara, how about you? What are your dreams for helping to address some of the challenges you shared?
Well, I do think that, I dream that there might be more like resources to just say, hey, you're looking for this. I love that Angie said something that makes me so happy that there's somebody just like right in our backyard, basically. So hey, there you go. That's the answer, one of them. And I think just being able to know who to reach out to, or having some sort of all-inclusive. I know that there is something, but I was looking at it and it was hard to kind of decipher for like my needs. I spent about 10 minutes and I was like, this one's all the way over there and this one's like, so I mean, maybe just tailoring things to be a little more like geocentric to where you are. So like the person who's looking on this web page for local foods, maybe there's a way to do like a radius search or, a category. I didn't see that necessarily. It was just kind of a list, and maybe that would be a dream for me, to be able to just click here and there's the person and give them a call. Great. So that sounds good. And I mean, maybe being able to see somehow like pricing or what's going to be in season, or finding a link to their website if they have one, or like a CSA sign up, like you're getting 50 pounds of tomatoes this week. Yes. Sounds like Pico de Gallo. Yeah. So that's kind of that's my thoughts just as we discuss this here.
Thanks, Sarah. And Anna, how about you?
Yeah, so as a farmer, I think that I would also, similar to what Marlén said, I would love to see more connection around the business coaching and the business support part of it. I think there's often a lot of focus just generally around production and infrastructure growing, and less focus on how do you make sure that this enterprise that you're growing or scaling can actually cash flow, and that you can actually continue to grow it and be in business for the long haul, so that folks like myself can then actually be producing enough and at a price that someone like Sara could then source from. I think there's often a big disconnect from those things. And so I think that it would be really awesome to see if either through the application process or post-application process, there was an opportunity to partner with other potentially like ag organizations like Practical Farmers or the Food Finance Institute to offer producers some coaching specifically around the enterprise that they're focusing on with the funding. I think that would be really helpful. And then I think in general, I think there's so few people producing at scale that I think whatever support we can get to make sure that people can stay in business is really, really important. I think far too often there's people can't make it. And so how do we work together to make sure that more of us are making it? Yeah.
Thank you. Now I have different questions for each of you, so we're going to mix things up a bit. I'm going to start with you, Sara. For new or small and growing businesses like yours, what is the value to sourcing your foods locally? And you've touched on this a little bit, so I'm really just asking you a question in a different way.
Well, carbon footprint. I feel bad that I get stuff from Chicago that comes from Mexico, that who knows where else it comes from. Yeah, I just, I feel bad about that when I know that there are delicious tomatoes, delicious onions, and I'm going through boxes and boxes of them every week, and somebody else could get it for me, maybe at a similar price. And then I can give back to a farmer and continue to basically keep it in the community. So that is a value, supporting each other in the community. We have like our next door neighbors at the business, they're Marco's Pizza. We always are ordering pizza from them, and they're always coming to us. I mean, that's keeping, that's the same sort of idea that you're supporting your neighbor, you're keeping things more local, and you're building a stronger community. You have pride in your community, and you can essentially refer people that didn't know about a farm before. We can say, like, here's a little placard that says these tomatoes are from this farm. And it's another way for farmers to have a more like a direct impact on their community, instead of just the farmer's market, right? Like, you're going to hit a lot of different folks in my store than you're going to hit at the farmer's market. And I mean, there's a lot of people who work at the time the farmer's market's happening that they couldn't get out there, but at least they can get, they can maybe even buy some of the tomatoes that we use, and then they kind of have a link to that local farm too. So it just keeps it all kind of in the circle of the local community life, right?
Thank you.
Yep, that's what I had.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Sara. Marlén, another question you've touched on a bit, but what is important to you? Why is it important to you to connect small businesses to local resources?
Mainly because I want to keep the money and the wealth here. I wanted to keep it locally in all ways, and ways that we can figure out how can we strengthen local systems, I think that will always be the key. One of the most interesting things that we're seeing right now with the recession and inflation, local right now is looking like it's beating some of these other prices. And folks might not know that option unless they go and check out, like, these eggs are getting kind of really expensive. I wonder what my local person might charge me. You never know. And sometimes it could become the more affordable option. But at the end of the day, I tell people all the time, anything happens, where are you going to go? Like, I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything, but I'm just saying, so if supply systems fail, where are you going to look to first? You're going to start in locally. So you want to have something, you have strong local connections with your food and other options, community gardens, all these things, so that that you have something more to fall back on, right? And in general, just you want to know where your food is coming from. For any person with a business, you talk to people who say, I get a lot of customers because I have this specific dish and it's really good. And most often you ask them, like, what makes it so well? And the answer will most likely be because it's sourced locally. Something in this dish or product comes from this thing that they have found that really makes whatever it is that they're selling kind of stand out. And I just really strongly believe in having strong local economies. And one of the main ways is we eat. It's a huge part of our culture, our society through and through across cultures. So can we find a way to support local food systems? And that's what I would say. We want to support more farmers being able to plant seeds that are, not corn and soy or other things. We can do more. So that's what I would share.
Thanks, Marlén. So Anna, your farm is not in Johnson County, but many of your customers are, and your impact is definitely felt in Johnson County. So I'd love to hear your perspective on what a local food system is and how we can think about local in a more expansive way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for context, for people who don't know, my farm is located right on the edge of Delaware County / Northern Lynn County. So I'm about an hour straight drive to Iowa City. And so I very much feel that we are serving the Johnson County Food Shed and that we are growing as part of the Johnson County Food Shed while being a couple counties away. And so when I think about our regional food system, I definitely feel that it is, I usually think about it as being like Eastern Iowa as a whole, but I oftentimes also think about it as being more like a couple hour radius, because for us, so much of our money that goes out of our business and goes towards other businesses like processors does go a couple hours away. So I see us supporting this poultry processor who's in Rock Falls, Illinois, and I see us supporting a red meat processor that we use that's in Wisconsin. And so I do see our money flowing in different ways, and it's not all just attached to the small area that we live. I think when we have been building our business and thinking about who we serve and how we serve people, we've been really intentional about not forgetting and not serving our own local rural community as well. So while we do sell pretty substantially to Iowa City and in the greater metro areas, we've also been intentional to make sure that we're offering those same opportunities to people who live in rural Delaware County. And yeah, how I think about our regional food system, I think it's expansive. I think it's going to take all of us. Again, I think there's just not that many farms. And so I think it takes all of us working together and collaborating across county lines, potentially across state lines, in order to support each other in producing enough food to feed ourselves and each other and our communities. Yeah, I'm not sure that I have anything else to add. I think that I feel really grateful that we were able to apply for this grant and really appreciated the expansive definition of what it looked like. And I do feel like, a Johnson County, a frequent Johnson County, but our farm is relatively far from Iowa City and the Johnson County area.
Thank you. All right, the last question I have, so go ahead and put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them, is how does investing in food and farm businesses strengthen our community? And I'm going to start with Marlén, but Sara and Anna, if you have responses to this, I'll come to you next.
Okay. Can you repeat the last question again? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem. How does investing in food and farm businesses strengthen our community?
Really, just touching base on the last answer I gave, it helps build stronger communities for everybody else. Like, I mean, we're all connected in the food system. If we invest, what we invest locally, we will get it back. And one of the things too is we want to support local food businesses that make it here, and we can keep them here so that they can then remove themselves from the business and then say, you know what, I'm going to start this other endeavor that's going to give back to that community. It's able to help support more food pantries. It's able to say, you know, we can have capacity. Here's a great example that I really, really enjoy that really is going to answer this question. Hodge Construction, locally here, right? Very well known. They got very, very much involved and helped to fundraise and support the Coralville Community Food Bank so that they can move to their new space. They did a lot of the construction for that new space, things like that. When you have businesses that can see the power of investing locally, they can then do things in the community that can help support other food businesses, you know, infrastructure, support systems, but we need more people to see that connection. I do have to give another shout out to Southgate companies. So I'm actually taking this call in the new South District Market. That has opened up with one vendor, but we have 3 other vendors here. We have a total of 3 food vendors here that are slowly but surely doing a soft opening. But this was not possible without community leaders who understood that small food vendors, small food business owners wanted to take it up to the next level, right? And wanted to try, can they have an indoor spot and then a food truck and then a brick and mortar, right? But we talked with Southgate Company, who they have nothing to do with food, with business. They have nothing to do with food business, right? They are in the retail, right? They own properties. But we told them, before you build out, this is me, Angie, Tasha, Wendy Ford with the city. We talked to them and we said, before you decide to do something with the storefront, because the whole back is storage. We asked them, can we work with you in the city so that we can save the storefront and we can have 4 or 5 vendors there to give them an opportunity to see, can we test this here, a small indoor market, so that if this works, maybe there's a vision to move somewhere else. And they decided, after many communication, many conversations, talking about the importance of investing locally, they said, okay, we're going to do it. And we had the ribbon cutting not too long ago, and they were concerned about who's going to show up for this. Is this a good investment that we made? You know, they're nervous. They're thinking about their bottom line. We had the most people show up to this ribbon cutting for the chamber than any event locally in the Iowa City area, the Johnson County area. And it was a beautiful event, but all of this was because of communication, connectors, community leaders, supporting small food business vendors, and working and leveraging business property owners to say, can we have a collaboration here? Can we figure something out to help support other business owners? So those are just 2 examples that I mentioned, but that's the importance of investing locally and having strong community food systems and of all these kind of things, right? Diversity markets, supporting other markets that are popping up, right? They help feed and connect more people to these types of resources. So it's all connected, and happy to be here and share a lot of this stuff, and happy to work with anybody about how can we make the next round of applications, you know, more business education for more people so that they can apply for more funds.
Thanks. Sara or Anna, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? No? All right. We do have a couple of questions. The first one I think is probably for Marlén. The person says they're curious if business planning support would be better in a group setting or more like one-on-one support. Does it depend where people are at in developing their business, and are there cultural differences for entrepreneurs and business owners that we should be aware of?
My short answer to that would be definitely one-on-one, having time slots where you can sit down and maybe you block out a week or something with some local coaches, and you set up times and people can come in and have a good 90-minute session to do really a business diagnostic. Can you measure where's the health of your business right now? Where are things that we can focus on to help improve those goals for this quarter, for this year? to talk about really how to set up the business operation back end of any business. So regardless if it's food, if I'm selling headphones, computers, it doesn't matter. What matters is, can we walk you through all the business essentials on the back end so that you know all these things that have to be set in place. Now, for specific cultures and demographics, obviously language will probably be one where you want to have coaches that are multilingual, that can provide the same service in Spanish. But really the information is really the same for any business across, right? What we need help with is then giving them the basic business one-on-ones on the operations, and maybe then doing something larger, like Anna was saying about, can we have conversations or panels with the food financing people that are then very in the weeds about specific strategies on how to grow your business when it comes to food and business in that sense. But I definitely think that there's a way that you can marry both of them, and just give people access to other resources that they can find locally, that they can then reach out to and continue the business education that they need. And it doesn't matter if you see a business in the corner that's been around for 10 years. You'd be surprised when you get to meet the business owners, then you realize that, you know, that they have not gotten the profits that they wanted out of the business. People just see a business and they think, oh, they have money. And that is far from the truth. You know, people are doing everything they can to get to those profits, but it takes time. And it's okay to talk about it. And let's make people comfortable with seeking for the education and the resources that they need so that they are sustainable and they're applying for future funding and then giving back, right?
Thank you. We also had a question. Were there any grants or grantees who work with or plan to work with local food pantries and or shelters? I will answer this, but if any of the other grant reviewers on the call, maybe Giselle or Elsa wants to jump in. We did have a couple of applications from organizations that work within the charitable food system. I put a link there that has more information about who received grants. I had a longer response to this and I don't remember it, but it just looks like you unmuted yourself. So go ahead.
Sure, I can hop in. Yeah, we did have some pantries or folks affiliated with pantries, some farmers that were partnering with pantries, 126 applicants. So there was a lot of different kinds of applications that did come in. And I See Compassion was one of the recipients, one of the 9 recipients this round. The money was more geared toward the Global Food Project, which is their community garden space. But I See Compassion also does run a pantry in Johnson County. So sort of indirectly kind of funding a pantry in that way. But I also put a link in the chat. There's a lot of funding available on the state level right now through the LFPA program. So if you know of pantries or you know of people who are just getting food out for free to community members who otherwise might be experiencing food insecurity or lack access to high quality food, they can apply to be part of that program. So there's funding available at the state. And then Molly mentioned in the chat as well that Johnson County, with some of the ARPA money, we're also funding the VeggieRx program, which partners with local producers to make food boxes of local food that then gets distributed to 4 different pantries in Johnson County. So some of the ARPA funding is also being directed to people who are working towards food access through pantries.
And I just want to add on to that and call out directly that most of the food businesses who received funding this year are already working with food access agencies in some capacity within their business, whether it be through that local food purchasing assistance, whether it be through sliding scale payment options, whether it be partnering with Table to Table for gleaning, in-field partnering to have Table to Table come in and help harvest fruits and vegetables for distribution to food pantries, and or Table to Table also does food rescue at farmers markets, and there's other opportunities for that. So I think we're already seeing that work that local businesses are already really great about doing.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. I would say almost everyone on this list is donating food in some way currently. So yeah.
Yes, thank you, Giselle and Elsa, for those builds. And just another reason why supporting local food businesses is so great for the community and has a lot of ripple effects. Do our panelists have any final thoughts or questions that they would like to share with us? No? All right. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Giselle to help us wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just want to say thank you again. I know we had some of this at the beginning of the program, but thank you again to everyone who helped make this event possible. Thank you to our amazing panelists. I feel like I am so much smarter than I was an hour and a half ago, and feel so inspired by the work that you do every day in our communities. And I'm really appreciative that you are willing to be vulnerable about some of the barriers, but also lifting up the strengths and the good work that you're doing in our community. So thank you. Just a few slides here to wrap up. So originally, with this community food and farm grant program, we received ARPA funding and originally had an allocation of $125,000. Well, because of all of the people who applied through this grant, we were able to increase this funding. So we had an overwhelming response, as we talked about, that people in our community stepped forward, applied for this grant, sort of illuminated all of the good work that's happening and also some of the needs that exist within our local food community. And so because so many people applied, and I know many of the people on this call applied, that allowed us to advocate to the Johnson County Board of Supervisors to allocate more funding to meet the community need that we know is here. So thank you to everyone who applied. Thank you to the people on the Food Policy Council who advocated for this, and to our staff and to the Board of Supervisors who then responded to that need. So because of that, we have 3 additional cycles. We're going to have $200,000 available each year for the next 3 years to allocate. So 2023, 2024, and 2025. So it's really exciting to be able to have more funding to be able to allocate to the people who are doing such great work in our community. So applications will open again this fall. If you Google Johnson County, Iowa, local foods grant, you will find this link. So please stay up to date. And it's linked in the chat box here too. So what's next for the Food Policy Council? We're really excited this year. There's a lot of energy around this community food and farm grant. So we have a working group that's focusing just on strengthening and promoting this program. We also have a rural network connections working group who's looking to build more relationships and continue to get to know more of what rural Johnson County is doing, what their strengths are, and what some of the needs in the rural parts of Johnson County are. And then we have a value-added business development group. So thinking about people who are not just producing raw product, but are also doing things to add value, like making salsa or making empanadas or making sauerkraut, or as Anna talked about, processing meat, and how we can support those types of businesses. Really excited. So I feel like a lot of the discussion during the panel today was around how do we build more connections? How do we build a network of support so that we can keep on learning from one another, so that we can keep on supporting each other's businesses and work in our community? So we are going to be hosting happy hours, which is an opportunity to just come and talk and meet people and learn about the resources and make friends and build connections. So if you're interested in joining the Food Policy Council for some happy hours, social events, you can get added to our email list by filling out the survey, the form that we're going to get to in just a second about this event. You can also look on our website, or you can check social media. So Johnson County has a Facebook page, which is really great, and we always post our events there. So applications for the Food Policy Council. Molly mentioned this at the beginning of the presentation, but the Johnson County Food Policy Council is recruiting new members currently. Excuse me. So if you know anyone who's passionate about food systems, anyone who has expertise in food systems, or just simply grows, cooks, processes, distributes, or eats food and wants to be an advocate for building a more equitable and local and resilient food system in Johnson County, then please encourage them to apply. We're not a scary group. We have a good time, and we also get to make impactful change to support the amazing people like the ones on this panel that you heard from today. So applications are due June 20th. Please help us spread the word, or if you're interested, you can apply yourself. And then one big ask, thank you so much for sharing your time already tonight. One more ask is that you fill out a short Google form about the event tonight. It helps us get better about hosting events that are welcoming and meaningful to members of our community. So please, please take 5 minutes. You can do it right now while I'm talking on this last slide. And if you fill that out and put your email in, then we can also be sending you invitations to happy hours or other events that are hosted in the community. It's a great way to keep in touch. Other ways to keep in touch with the council. We have our local foods website. So again, www.johnsoncountyiowa.gov/local-foods. Another great way is to attend the Food Policy Council meetings. Our next meeting is Monday, May 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. We host these in a dual format, so you can join in person or you can also join via Zoom, and they're open to the public. So if you want to engage with the kinds of things that we're talking about or listen in, really encourage anyone who's interested to join. And then you can always reach out to our Johnson County Local Food and Farm Manager, Ilsa DeWald, or myself, the chair of the Food Policy Council, if you want to get in touch one-on-one and ask questions or connect. And that is our last slide. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone, to our team who organized this event. Thank you to our interpreter, and thank you to our panelists, Anna, Sara, Marlén, for a really important conversation. Thanks for bringing to life what's happening on the ground when we talk about some of these theoretical concepts of local food work. It's good to see how the people in our community are taking care of the land, taking care of each other, and strengthening our community so that we can all have access to good food. I think that's it. Does anyone else have any last thoughts, things that I forgot to say? Chat box, who can we contact for one-on-one? Yeah, in that last slide, you can contact either Ilsa or myself. And this recording will be posted online as well on our website. So if you want to rewatch, or if there was something that you missed and want to revisit, this will be available for the public. So thank you all. I hope you get to enjoy the last minutes of sunshine, and let's keep talking. Hope to see you at a happy hour. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.